Alright, what's going on everyone? I wasn't really sure what kind of format to kind of do this in, so I just figured that I would kind of just talk over top of the workout footage and just kind of tell what we did, why we did it, how to do certain things, maybe just some pointers to start off with. So anyway, we did this at Wolfgang's gym, and this is kind of an old school bodybuilding gym, and one of the really cool things that they have here is an inverted leg press, and so we started out with that. This is a great one just because you're dropping your knees all the way to your chest and you're really getting a lot of just leg drive without a lot of core. So a lot of leg press machines, you push horizontally, and because of that you kind of brace with your stomach, and you might use a lot more just core and holding your breath than you would think. But this one, since you kind of drop down and fight against gravity, you use a lot more of your legs just to kind of push out of that hole. So this one was kind of just a great one just to get started with and to stretch out our hamstrings and kind of just get everything fired up before we started actually going. I usually keep my feet about shoulder width apart and then just try to think about dropping my knees into almost where my armpits are. And I didn't really go too heavy. Usually when Taylor and I work out together, we kind of keep everything in the range of 10. So I started pretty light with only 2 plates on each side. We have this rule too where I have to do double what she does, or she does half of what I do. And usually that's to my downfall because she's really strong. So I started out with 2 plates. I think she actually wound up moving up to 2 plates. Which is kind of emasculating to me, but I wound up moving up to 3 plates each side. My lower back has been bothering me for a little bit, so I was just trying to get everything situated without having to use too much lower back and kind of just test that out. And we wound up supersetting this with dumbbell straight leg deadlifts. These are one of my favorites for hamstrings because they're almost like an ab wheel. They work to where you stretch yourself out as you're doing them, and they really just get a great feeling that you don't usually feel until 2 days later or so. I usually like to do these with my feet on maybe a 10-pound plate or so, just to get my toes up. This kind of just gets a deeper stretch because your heels are going to be below your toes, and so that kind of activates your hamstrings a little bit more. The trick here is to just keep your weight on your heels as you do these. So see how Taylor's toes are lifted up? That's the right way to do everything, and I'm still kind of learning to get that balance, if that makes sense. So I kind of just think about sliding down the front of my legs, and you want to think about moving your body around the weight. You want to think about the weight having a straight path down to the ground. So pretty much just think about pushing your heels towards the back wall, pushing your hips towards the back, and then just sliding down, but without using too much lower back. Usually with these, I sometimes use some sort of lifting strap just because sometimes my grip goes, and that's what I usually fail on before my legs give out. But today, just wanted to focus a little bit more on stretch, so use dumbbells. So this one was a great one to pair with the inverted leg press because we are getting 2 different forms of hamstring stretching, but also getting some good kind of push work in with that. So right after that, we wound up moving on to every bikini girl's favorite exercise, the hip thrust. And actually, this is a really hard movement if you do it right. It's become one of my favorites recently too, just because of how good of a squeeze you can get at the top. Taylor really likes doing it with a band, and I've really come to fall in love with that. I just need to get a band for myself for when I do it alone. A band really helps just kind of focus on that mind-muscle connection because you're having to squeeze to be able to keep it held between your legs. So as you come to the top, you just get so much more glute activation here. So what we usually like to do is we start with maybe 10 with the bar, and then we drop the bar after we do 10 and just do 10 with body weight. These are great to do on the Smith machine too if you don't have a free bench like this. I know some places are weird and maybe just have a dumbbell bench, which is kind of hard to brace your back against, but thankfully for us we had this, which was kind of anchored into the ground. The trick here is not really to just hoist the weight up. You want to get something to where you can hold at the top. I usually like to use a pad or a mat on top of the bar because otherwise as you start getting heavy, it can really hurt. And I would also say just kind of think about driving through with your heels. It can take a little bit to kind of get your back situated on the bench, but kind of just think about the small of your back, maybe in between, not necessarily in between your shoulder blades, but right below. That's where you should kind of have pressure on the bench and push from. So I kind of just think about my body straight as I go up. So as my hips go up, my head goes back. So you just want to keep that torso in a straight line. We supersetted these with an exercise called Good Mornings. I'd never really done these until maybe Thanksgiving, I want to say, but they're almost like just a reverse straight leg deadlift, where the weight is on top of you rather than you holding it, but you're doing the same kind of motion. So just different weight distribution here, but this is another great one that just kind of stretches out the hamstrings, and you don't really have to go too heavy for these to be able to feel it. With these, kind of similar motions, so heels back, hips back, just bend forward at the waist. So as you're working a certain muscle, I can't stress this enough, if you're trying to work that specific muscle, think about that being the only thing that moves. So if you're trying to work your hamstrings, don't just bend over. Think about your hamstrings being what moves you, if that makes sense, through the movement. And the next thing we did was hack squats. And hack squats are great if you have them in your gym because you can really get your toes high up and sink down to where your butt is almost touching the ground, but it feels very, very natural, if that makes sense. See, if I were to do a regular squat, it would be hard to kind of go literal ass to grass like I am in here because just the nature of the movement. But with here, your back is straight, your back is against the pad, and you're able to kind of move straight down versus moving kind of around, if that makes sense, because your knees can go a little bit further out without kind of risking any sort of injury. So with these, I kind of like to keep my toes almost hanging off the edge and then kind of bowing my legs out just a little bit as I go down, just to be able to get all the way down comfortably. And as usual, like everything else, we usually stick to around 10 reps here. So some of these things that I'm not used to, I haven't really done hack squats in a while, I might start a little bit lighter, kind of gauge where I am, and then the next set move up until I can reach a number around 10 to where I'll fail right at or right before 10. We wound up pairing these with sissy squats. Sissy squats are a great quad burner because your feet are anchored in, but it's kind of the negative of the motion that make your legs work. So as you go down, just controlling that motion really kind of burns out your quads. And this is one that I usually like to do either at the beginning or the end of my workout, just to get the blood firing or to get that final burnout. I usually like to keep a bar in the front of my body just because it kind of distributes the weight better, but if you like a back bar, then by all means do that. I kind of just like it just because if I'm going to work the front of my legs, I want the weight emphasis to be on the front of my legs. Taylor tried doing this with a band. I don't really know if it did much good, but I mean, anything with a band is worth a try. You never know, and you need all the glute activation you can get, you know? Next thing that we did is one of my favorite things. This is standing single leg hamstring curl. This I almost think about as being a bicep curl for your leg. So whereas when you lie down to do a hamstring curl, it might be easy to just kind of like donkey kick it up towards your butt. This one you kind of have to have a little bit more finesse and be a little bit smoother with. So as usual, we stuck with 10. I like this one just because you have a little bit more of an anchor to hold on to with your hands and really can kind of just get that emphasis and contraction with your leg as you curl up. We paired these with something I'd never done before, but I actually really had a hard time with this, and it was really good. So if there's any sort of assisted pull-up or dip machine, just put the weight down pretty considerably on the stack and push down with your foot. We kept our back foot on the bottom step and really just kind of push through the heel. This is a great one, almost like a glute kickback or something like that, but just a different kind of motion, just because as you go down, the weight kind of distributes differently. So this one was nice too, just because as you got to the bottom, you didn't have any pressure, but then trying to control it back up to keep it from slamming was a different challenge in itself. So really got the peach emoji burning. So between everything, we did a lot of just hamstring and glute stuff, so by this point I was really feeling it, which I didn't even hit 10 I think on my last couple sets. So all in all, I think we did about 4 sets of everything, stuck to around 10 reps for everything, and just supersetted pretty much every exercise that we did, just to keep the blood flowing, keep everything moving. It's always nice when you're doing one exercise to immediately have something else to go into. So I would definitely say try this out on your next leg day. It could be a cool little challenge and introduce you to some things that you've never tried before. If you wind up liking it, just let me know. And we're going to keep trying to just make some good routines just to be able to put together and put out for the rest of you guys to do. So anywho, good luck in your leg day and take a Belfie for me.